This is Brandon Phoenix, a.k.a. I Also Hate Pitt from the Raspy Voice Kids. You are now in the new studio. I hope you like the digs. We're loving them so much. But far more important than any of that, yesterday was National Signing Day. They used to call it National Letter of Intent Day. The idea is it's the day that kids who play football can decide where they're going to play football for the next 4 years of their life, for most cases anyway. And the man who knows as much about what West Virginia University does when it comes to recruiting as anyone else in the business is Keenan Cummings. Keenan, thank you for joining the Raspy Voice Kids today.
Thank you for having me on. That's quite high praise. I hope to live up to your standards here. Thanks for having me on to the old Raspy Voice Kids again. I really appreciate it.
Man, you've never let us down in person, on the show, and you get to christen this new studio. You're here before Jeremy's even here, so let's get to it. When I look at this class, the first thing that jumps out is it's ranked number 50, right? But you said something.
Yeah, I think we're...
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I think it's around 50, 52, but there's some interesting things with that.
What's interesting?
Well, I think a lot of people get caught up on the numbers, Brandon. You know, when they look at things, they see that number, that 50, that 52, that really stands out to them. What people have to remember is recruiting's changed quite a bit, actually. There's two different periods now. You know, everyone calls it signing day. It's really a period. It's a 48-hour window where kids can sign their letter of intent in December, which is completely new to recruiting starting last year. Last year was the first year of it. This is the second year of it. And then you have your traditional period, which runs from the first Wednesday in February all the way into April. So there's two windows here, and that doesn't even factor in what West Virginia or any other school could bring in the spring and the summer. So there's a lot of recruiting left to be done. You see that number, that crooked number, that 52, people kind of get a little leery. It's important to note, last year West Virginia had a top 25 class at this time, but they also had 22 commitments. West Virginia has 16 commitments right now, and no transfers, no players like that are going to count against it. So right now they have 16, but it's a pretty solid 16, and there's a lot of room for growth. You look at that list, if you go by Rivals rankings, there's one school on that entire list that is ranked ahead of West Virginia right now that has fewer commitments. So a lot of them have 20-some. So there's a lot of room for them to jump up in the late period.
So that's the big deal. That's one of the big things I want to talk about. Somebody talked about on Twitter the fact that we have to have a top 30 class to compete. And of course, people will often say stars don't matter. I don't agree with that. I think they do to some extent. People can overperform. People can underachieve. But please explain to people what goes into ranking a class. Is it just how good the talent is, or is there more to it when you're getting a Rivals ranking when we're looking at what West Virginia or any other school actually did?
Well, the way Rivals does it, you can look at it several ways. Your general ranking is a lot of different factors. Numbers are going to play a massive effect in that. They take the top 20 players in your class. So if you don't even have 20 players, you're not even meeting really the threshold of what they take. They take the top 20 rated players in your class, and then everyone else goes into a formula. They have different rankings. You know, you can see a 3-star, but there's a 5.7 3-star, a 5.6 3-star, a 5.5 3-star. And each of those are assigned different points towards the total. If a guy's a Rivals 100 player, you get more points. If the guy's a 5-star, you get more points. A top 250 player, as opposed to just a classic 4-star, you get more points. So there's a lot that goes into the formula, but I think what's really important about this West Virginia class, and one reason I'm actually pretty excited about what they've got right now, I am not blowing smoke in the slightest. I think this is a pretty impressive class right now. It gets an incomplete on the grade card right now because you have a lot of work still left to do. They have 7 spots they've got to fill in some critical positions. But what they've got is pretty impressive. This is important to note. As of today, West Virginia's average star ranking, which is quality per recruit, is 3.06. At this time last year with the top 25 class, it was 3.04.
304 I like. 3.06 I like better. And of course, there's a little number play with the area code. You talked about exactly what I was thinking. People look at class rankings and they don't account for the fact that sometimes it's based on size. It's not just based on stars. And like you said, people have different opinions. Another thing that I think is important to talk about, and you can speak to this better than I can, is fit. How well a kid fits your system or how well you recruited to your positions of need, right? Like, for example, if you recruit 2 5-star quarterbacks, of course your ranking as far as a class goes up, but only one of those kids can play, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it also comes into effect, too, especially in the case of West Virginia. They take a lot of junior college players. Not necessarily in this class so far, but they're going to backfill it with junior college players. That's what I expect the next signing period to be, pretty much predominantly junior college or transfer. But they take a lot of those guys, and they're evaluated differently. You can have a guy that's going to come in and make an immediate impact, like Keith Washington, but he might be rated lower than a high school cornerback because the way they're rated is they look at it over the long haul.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that go into it, but I definitely would not be pushing the panic button right now. I would be straight up on this. I did not like the 2016 class. I wasn't really a fan of the 2017 class. It had some bright spots. Last year I liked. This year, so far, I underline so far because I think some positions have to be filled for it to be considered a good class. But so far, this one's pretty impressive. If you look at it player for player, it's probably my favorite right now, underline right now again, since that 2013 class that had a lot of pros in it.
So I have a lot of faith in Jack Allison because he was the scout team champion, just like Will Greer was in the year that he had the red shirt. Trey Lowe being the dual threat and multiple sport athlete. We know that he physically is gifted. We're going to get to see both of those guys in the bowl game. But in this class, we did not sign a quarterback. And I know that there were 5 guys they targeted. All of those guys elected to go elsewhere. So West Virginia has decided they're going to go JUCO. Is that correct as far as the quarterback position for this class?
I think they've reset the board a little bit. I think this happened probably when Maurer fell off the board. I think that's when things really started to get shuffled a little bit. Just kind of cast a wide net, look at all the options. Right now, I think there's a plan in place. I think Dana hinted to it a little bit yesterday in his press conference. I think they're going to go after a transfer. Whether that means a guy that can play right away, probably not. But definitely a guy that they can bring in, a guy that is going to be able to give them another arm, be able to compete, and they'll bring in some walk-on guys too. I definitely expect some high-quality walk-ons in this class.
So who's the crown jewel of this class in your opinion?
That's a tough one. My favorite, I'm not going to count transfers necessarily. Powell's been, he's been here for a while, and of course, Isaiah Isdale's been here a while. You wipe them off the board. The 16 guys that they signed yesterday, for immediate impact, I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen.
No, not immediate impact, Keenan. No. Who is your crown jewel? Like, who's the guy that you just think is going to be a star, whether it's sooner than later? Who's the star?
I think it's Steve Smith. I think he's the most criminally underrated player in this class, and it's really not even close to me. I think that if you watch that guy's tape, you see, this is the thing. He's still figuring things out, but from an athletic standpoint, he is so impressive. I watched him in 7-on-7, which I know is not real football, but you get a case of how athletic somebody is. He was the best guy on the field, offensive or defensive. You line him up wherever. He is kind of, if Teddy Gibson could take Plato and create somebody for that first spot, it would be him. He's big, physical, hits, can run, can cover. He's got some figuring out to do with the football side of things. He's still a little raw, but what helps him is he plays in a 3-3-5 in his current high school.
Nice.
So the learning curve is not going to be too steep. I'm not projecting he's going to break out and have 100 tackles next year. I'm not sure if he'll play next year, but I think 2 years down the road, maybe a year down the road, he's a guy that if he doesn't break out, I'll be surprised.
A question for my brother. I've got 3 more questions after this. My brother is curious about Jace Rogers. Is he completely off the radar? No chance for him coming?
I'm not ever going to say never, but at this point, I don't see it happening.
Next question. Doug Nestor, he softened his commitment to Ohio State? Are we in any way at play for the in-state superstar offensive lineman?
I think that one's wait and see. From what I hear, all signs are pointing to Georgia and Penn State are the 2 that could really stand to benefit. I know he's still committed to Ohio State, but everything I hear is Penn State's really got a lot of momentum there with Juwan Sider. They have a relationship that dates back a long time between him and his son. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And then, of course, like I said, with Georgia, they're making a push. They're expecting to bring him down to it for an official. I think West Virginia's only chance to really hang in this race or really get into this race is if they're able to get an official. But at this stage, with what West Virginia's got, I think they like their 3 linemen. I think you might see a JUCO guy, a guy that can play right away as opposed to a prep guy.
So then you've got Brenton Strange at Penn State. I'm sure that can't hurt them trying to get Doug Nestor. What about Darnell Wright? There are rumors about him.
It's going to come down to if he takes an official. It's simple as that. I was pretty surprised. He did not include West Virginia in his top 10 list.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes.
I thought, honestly, Keenan, you can tell me if I was wrong, but I thought it was intentional, almost like a spit in our face. Am I just being sensitive?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I really do not know. He's been completely silent pretty much for most of his recruitment. I used to talk to him early on, but as his recruitment kind of elevated, he has definitely shut things down, at least when it comes to, being as open. I think the thing that shocked me about that is just because there hasn't been much West Virginia buzz in so long, and then his coach says, hey, we might take an official there. But here's the difference. Anyone that follows recruiting knows this. Might take an official and take an official are two completely opposite statements.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space in between there from might to actually doing it.
The final question I have for you, there's some smoke about Loho. What you got for me?
See, right now, I think that there's a really good chance that happens. I'll leave it at that.
So we're talking about Logan Holgorsen as a possible preferred walk-on, and you're saying that it's possible it could happen.
That seems to be the rumor, huh? That seems to be going around. I think there's more than a smoke. I think there's a brush fire at this point.
Well, let's be honest, man. You hear things, I hear things. We can't always talk about the things that we hear, but like you said, where there's smoke, there's fire, and it's getting a little hot. And I'll tell you right now, man, I watched the kid on the field with Will and Jack, and even Scott, going back to Skyler. It would be a really cool thing to see Logan Holgorsen repping that flying WV for 4 years, 5 years possibly. That would be a cool thing. He'd definitely be a hometown favorite. And he just seems like a good dude. So I would love that for him and for Dana if that is what he chooses to do. But Keenan?
Yeah, I think that the thing with him, too, is that's a high-quality walk-on. If they're able to get him in, like you said, we'll see how it goes. But if they're able to get him in, that's another high-quality walk-on to add with the guy they added yesterday, and Javon Thrift. He's a guy that had a lot of offers, and he's going to walk on to West Virginia. That is telling you the elevation in the quality of prospect that they're being able to bring in to get guys like that are walking on that have Division I offers in quite a few different places.
And with Loho, he knows the offense. He's broken down film for years. So there's so many advantages he has as far as, like you said, the walk-on, that aspect. West Virginia's profile is definitely increasing. Darnell Wright and Doug Nestor could change the entire face of this class. Keenan, I know you got to go. I'm thanking you so much for being here because this is a blast. I love talking this stuff. I'm glad you could do it. Go do your thing, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, have me on anytime, man. I really enjoy it.
All right, man. Hey, look, and don't forget, Keenan, please don't forget, I also hate Pitt.